Can we communicate with angels?
Yes, we can.
How would we do that?
So I think before I answer that, let me answer how actual angels communicate amongst themselves. So basically the way it works is because they don't have bodies, so we communicate because I think of something, I make a set of sounds, and then you hear the sounds, and then you interpret it based upon that. So it's a physical kind of communication. But because they don't have bodies, that means that their communication is purely intellectual. So it's a kind of a telepathy. And so the way that works is one angel thinks of the other angel and thinks to himself, I want to communicate with that particular angel. Now, if you remember what I was saying earlier, God infuses the particular things as they're happening in the minds of the angels as they're happening. And so the angel that's infused in the other angel's mind, that angel so-and-so wants to communicate with you. Then just like with us, we can either listen to somebody or not. If he uses his will to turn towards that angel in his mind, then all that angel has to do is then he can start communicating what he wants to directly with them. Okay. So that basically means that they can use their mind to communicate with them. That's not any different from the very nature of prayer. In fact, with the definition of prayer is lifting the mind and heart to God. So we're directing our mind to him. And then when we do that, and then through our prayer that we communicate with him what we want, then when we do that, so obviously God knows all our thoughts anyway, but that's how we actually communicate with God, is just by directing our thoughts to him directly and communicating him with our thoughts. We can do it verbally as well.
Is verbally stronger than thought?
Yeah, it is in the sense that it's better for us, and so God tends to. It doesn't mean that God doesn't listen to the mental prayers, or even if you're talking to the angels.
Did you just say God does not listen to mental prayers?
No, he does.
He does.
He listens to them. But a lot of times when we vocalize it, it helps our faculties become more focused, and it's a stronger prayer as a result. And so that's why a lot of times there's also certain kinds of prayers he just wants done vocally anyway. So and because he made us as human beings and made us with the ability to communicate in that fashion, he also wants us to do that from time to time. On the other hand, there's also certain kinds of prayer that you want to be entirely mental. Okay. With the angels, then what we do is it's the same kind of a mechanism that they have. It's just that under certain circumstances, they are permitted to communicate directly to us so that we hear their thoughts, but that's extremely rare. But if we direct our thoughts to them, the same mechanism occurs. So if I direct my thoughts, say, to my guardian angel and ask him to do something, in fact, I can tell a story behind that. So to give an example, I had a case where the woman was possessed. I was in an airport. Was just about to get onto the plane. I was in line at the gate, and the woman I was working with calls me, and who was possessed, and she calls me and she says, "Hey, I'm pinned and I can't move," and so which they had done to her before. And then she hands the phone to the assistants, because anytime I do a session, there's always lay assistants that are present. And they said, yeah, they took the phone. They said, yeah, we can't budge her. We can't move her. And I'm like, well, I'm standing. I'm literally handing the stewardess or whatever, the gate woman, my boarding pass. So I just said, well, I can't do it now. But my flight's only about an hour. I'll call you in about an hour. And so then I hung up. And then I just mentally said to the guardian angel of my priesthood, go and help her. And then I just got onto the plane. An hour flight later, I get off the plane, and then I call her back and I said, you're still pinned? She says, yes, I'm still pinned. So then I just said a couple of binding prayers. Boom, the demon let loose for right away, and then she just hangs up on me. And she says, I gotta go. She hangs up. About 5 minutes later, she calls back and she says, well, the reason I hung up is because I hadn't been to the bathroom in 5 hours. I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. And then she said, and by the way, did you send the guardian angel of your priesthood to me? And I said, yeah, how did you know? He said he appeared to me and held my hand during this whole episode. So the fact that I was able to mentally communicate that with my guardian angel is an indicator that they can hear our thoughts. And so we can ask them. The way our guardian angels work is their involvement in our life is based on two things. One, what God tells them to do. Hey, you need to do this, 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 or this, or I don't want you to protect them under this circumstance because I want them to go through this test, or I want them to suffer this for the sake of their soul, or whatever the case is. So God communicates that to them. But the primary way that they get involved in our lives is by our asking them. So the more we ask them, and the more we invoke their intercession and working in our lives, the more they become involved. And so sometimes people will say, well, my guardian angel doesn't do anything. I'm like, well, how much do you communicate with the guy? So if you communicate with them every single day, then you'll find that they'll be actually more involved in your life. Now, sometimes people will say, well, how do I know my guardian angel is even involved in my life? And it's very simple. Because they love God and they see his divine plan in relationship to us as human beings, they know that God's will is for us to live a normal life where we get to make free choices. That's what God wants for us. And that means that when our guardian angel is active, it means he's protecting us so that there's nothing trying to skew us or block us or do those things that would cause our bad choices. And so, or causing problems or difficulties in our lives. That's how you actually know. So in other words, the more natural our life seems, that's actually an indicator the more the angels are actually involved. Sometimes we'll get indication like, oh no, that was my guardian angel had to be protecting me in that particular set of situations. But that's not too common. But whereas, and the way we know that's how they work is that demons are the opposite. Everything they do is contrary to our nature. It tries to darken our intellect, make it harder for us to make good choices. They mess with everything in our lives. They try and mess everything up rather than just letting us live a normal life.
Do you think most human beings can differentiate the difference between a communication from an angel and a demon?
No. And the reason I say that is, I think there's some things that are pretty overt, and sometimes people know, okay, yeah, I think that was my guardian angel. I mean, I think that there's some on the more kind of extreme kind of levels. But I think that most people's even understanding of what is good and bad and how the angels even communicate with us and how the demons are involved in our life, there's so much confusion out there and so little understanding of this thing that people actually believe that, I had these amorous feelings for this person. It must be my guardian angel. No, demons can give you amorous feelings for people. So you have to be careful about that. Whereas the demons are never going to give you inclinations to want to love God more, to be more virtuous and things like that. So there are principles of discernment about how you can kind of sort these things out, but I don't think most people know them.
I think I had a encounter with an angel several years ago that I think that's what honestly led me to Christ.
Yeah.
And it is the only other time in my life where I really felt that there was a true battle for my soul happening in real time.
Right.
And it was at a very dark part of my life.
Yeah.
And I basically come to I had this intuitive feeling in my heart that I was transgenderism was really bothering me at the time. Right. And a lot of other things that were going on in the world. And I felt like maybe I was one of the only people speaking out about it. And
right.
It was just running rampant through the country. And so I had this internal battle in my head happening. And basically it was me convincing myself that maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I feel like I'm the only one speaking out against it. I feel like maybe I should just surrender. What's the point? Why fight this? Why speak out against it? Why do any of that? Because everybody appears to be for the celebrities that I respected, started speaking out for it. People I never would have expected speaking out about drag shows in front of toddlers,
Right.
you know, and all these things. And these are people that I never would have expected do this. And then 1 week later, after they announce that they're all for this, they get a massive TV show deal.
Right.
You know, and so I think I know what that is. But at the time, I didn't see that deal. And so I felt like I was surrendering my soul to evil. And I was just like, why even, who cares? Just give up. And I'd gotten to that point where I was almost there. We had walked into this, my wife and I had walked into this place we were vacationing in Sedona, Arizona. And we walked through the gate guards, you know, there was armed guards there that were arming the property or guarding the property. And I'd been there for a week. I'd seen all these guys, a lot of them watch the show. They'd say hi, you know, and this was the last night I was there, and I walked through the gate, and there's this older gentleman in there. I think he said he was an Air Force Vietnam vet or something. And he started trying to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to him. I was, like I just told you, I was in a pretty dark place. And my wife stopped to talk to him. I'd never seen this guy. Been there for a week. I know I pay attention to security because of my background. Had never seen this guy at all, ever. And so I'm kind of posturing like I don't want to talk to him, looking at him over my shoulder.
Right now.
My wife stops. I turn and I square up to him. He immediately read my mind from front to back. And he said, I only really remember the first thing that he said because it scared me that he was inside my head. And he said, you don't need to worry about all this transgenderism going on with the kids and just humans in general. That's not your battle. And then he went on and he started talking about, he said something about China, because China was really in my head, because that was when the spy balloons traversed the United States.
Right.
From Washington to Florida or South Carolina or wherever. And he started going into that. And I just looked at this guy in the eyes and I was like,
Yeah.
how are you inside of my head? And then a whole series of other events happened within minutes right after that. And that's basically what saved my soul and brought me to Christ.
Right.
And so what I want to ask you, is there a possibility that was my guardian angel or maybe an archangel?
Yes, it can be, actually. Usually when you see those kinds of experiences which are not normally explained, one of the other things that you'll notice is you'll never be able to find that guy again.
No.
Yep, yeah. So that's that's actually one of the indicators. It's a very similar story to a priest who, the first pastor I was under, he had to go to anoint somebody in a building. And when he got there, this 6-foot, big, burly police officer was there and said, you can't go in there, Father. And he just says, well, I have to. I've got to anoint. He says, no, you can't go in. Leave. And so the priest walks around the corner and then says, no, I got to go do it. So he turns back around. That police officer was nowhere to be found. He asked the police department. They'd never had any of that guy on there. But while he had walked around the corner and came back, 2 people were shot in the building. So that it's the same kind of a thing. They sometimes intervene in such dramatic ways in order to correct our path so that we don't end up going down the wrong path.
Why don't they do this more often? Why didn't they do this to the celebrity that I'm talking about?
Well, part of it has to do with...
Or maybe they did.
And maybe they did, yeah. I think some of it is also, it's how much involvement do we want to get them in our lives? I mean, do they, if the guardian angels appear to, would they even listen to him? So it's largely a matter of, as I mentioned, there's certain things that God tells them that the guardian angels what they need to do, but God's will for us is for us to get them involved in our lives.
I've also heard that if you're in the presence of an angel, it's terrifying would be the wrong word, but it is just an overpowering sensation that no human being could fathom. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, there might be certain experiences of people historically that would account for those kinds of things. But generally speaking, angels aren't that overt, and they tend to be much more subtle, and they're in our presence. I mean, your guardian angel is watching you all the time, and to keep watch over you, and from time to time putting those thoughts in your mind and that type of thing to help guide you and that type of thing. So they have a lot of presence to us that's not going to be that dramatic.
Do you have any other examples of human beings encountering angels? I mean, we hear, miraculous things with car wrecks. The car has been lifted off a body or saved them. Or
yeah, I mean, I've heard those kinds of stories too. Another story that a priest friend of mine had a parishioner who she was very elderly. And so there was a woman who was like 17 who would take her to mass every day. But the 17-year-old didn't have her driver's license, and the 80-year-old woman did. But she was very elderly, so they went to mass, and when they came back out, the elderly woman says, I just can't hardly move my arms. We're going to have to pray to Saint Raphael to come and to drive the car for us. So the older woman literally said a prayer to Saint Raphael. The next thing you know, the car starts up, turns, and then goes all the way to their house, shuts off. There was, I'll admit that when I was younger, I was not the best kind of an individual. So one time I got pretty schnockered, right? So,
I can see that.
Yeah. So this was long before I got my act together, but I got pretty schnockered, and I was at this friend of mine's house, which lived about 20 miles from where my parents lived. And I mean, I was on the verge of blacking out, got in my truck, started driving home. Then, I mean, all I remember is getting in the truck and telling him, no, I'm going to be all right. I start driving away. The next thing I remember is pulling into my house, my parents' house. I'm convinced that was my guardian angel, because there's no way. I mean, I literally blacked out for that whole distance.
Wow.
Yeah. So they do. I mean, it tells you, that those of us who try to be good have had bad pasts sometimes too. But you just have to make sure that you're trying to do everything you can to get the angels, your guardian angels especially, but all the angels too, involved in your life. And there's not just our own personal guardian angels. There's guardian angels of families, towns, countries, churches, those types of things. And so corporations of a certain size, there's just, God created a number of angels. And so you can also pray to the guardian angels of your children. Hey, make sure that Johnny, clue Johnny in to do this, that, and everything. And that empowers them to actually be able to go and do that more frequently.
I mean, I have another example that just popped in my head. I mean, several years ago, over a decade ago, I had a suicide attempt. And same thing. I was hammered, blacked out.
Yeah.
Don't remember how I got home. And I don't remember doing this. I reclined my seat in my garage with the car running.
Yeah.
And when I woke up in the morning, I woke up in my room. I lived in a townhome, and my entire townhome smelled like gasoline or some type of fuel. Woke up, ran downstairs, saw my pistol on the couch, a pistol that I don't carry every day. So I think maybe there was 2 attempts, or I was thinking about doing it twice.
Right.
Because I would have never accessed that pistol, especially at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when I've just tied on.
Right.
I go out to my garage, and the door handle was like a little bit like the door was a little hot to the touch, and I thought, holy shit, there's a fire in there or something. And I opened the door, but before I opened the door, I made the decision that if I open the door, I'm probably going to get blown to smithereens because all the fresh oxygen's going to rush in and blow me away. So I made that 3 times. I think I made the decision to die, to kill myself. I went in the garage and I saw my Audi with the seat reclined back, and the car was still running, and it was so hot in there that the gas tank melted, and the gas tank was leaking. It was a slow drip, but it was dripping fire out of the gas tank onto the exhaust muffler.
Whoa.
I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And that's just one example. Do you think that was a guardian angel? Was that God that intervened?
Yeah. A lot of times they'll actually do that. So, yeah, they'll do it. Speaking of cars, I had an experience once while I was driving. I was driving my truck to go out to the seminary to teach a course, and there was a car here and one here, and then I was behind it, and an ambulance comes on the other side. So this car right in the front just locks up the brakes and stops right in the middle. It's like a 40-mile-an-hour zone, just stops right in the middle. So the guy in front of him manages to stop before it get it. But by the time I hit the brakes, I'm looking at the back of this guy's thing like, I am just going to plow into the back of this guy's truck, right? And so, and I had my hands on there. It was not me. Literally, all of a sudden, the wheel just goes, whoom. I go right between these posts, go right between the posts, and then literally the wheel just goes, it goes right between the posts, back down, around those two, and right back up onto the road, and I'm driving. I'm like, yeah, okay, I need hazardous duty pay. But the point being is that I think that was my guardian angel.
Wow. I mean, I even have more examples. I mean, I've stepped on unexploded HE, high explosive ordnance in Afghanistan that stepped on it.
Yeah.
I took a picture of it because I was like, holy shit, I should be dead.
Yeah.
I just stepped on UXO HEDP round.
Yeah.
And it didn't blow.
Right.
And there's example, my friend Eddie Penny. I mean, he had a intuitive thought injected into his brain on a target in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Something told him, I can't remember the exact story, but something told him, don't go over there. 2 seconds later, the entire building is leveled.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In fact, that's part of the fact that they can put that kind of stuff into our imaginations. A lot of times we can talk about the fact that they actually can protect us spiritually, or protect us physically from these particular things that happen to us. They can also protect us spiritually by putting in our minds, you really probably should avoid that particular person. I'm not suggesting that people should just be, following their emotions and things like that, but the angels can actually protect us spiritually, even sometimes from ourselves, protect us from the wrong kinds of people. The other thing that I find fascinating about the angels, which is something which I actually use from time to time, is this is based upon the inversion of it. So I'll tell the inversion of it and then talk about why we know that angels do it. So demons can actually do this same mechanism, which is because they can affect our imagination. The demons can actually block people by affecting their imagination from focusing on things that you would normally think that they would focus on. This is how, like in our government, you can have people who are engaging in bad behavior for decades or even years, but just for decades. And nobody even pays hardly any attention to it. Like, why didn't anybody notice that? And that's because the demons can actually affect that. They said Hitler he had this phenomenal ability to, at the very last second, shift and change his schedule and just say, okay, I'm not going to, no, we're going to go over here. All of a sudden, boom, they would change it. There was actually a president here in the United States in recent past that had the same phenomenon, that he would just all of a sudden change his schedule out of the blue. And then they would find out there was an attempt on his life that was going to occur.
Wow.
So the demons can actually influence people that way too, but they can also block our ability to focus on stuff that, why hasn't anybody talked about this particular kind of fraud in the government when it's this rampant, that type of thing. And they can actually do that. Well, the same kind of mechanism, so they can keep people hidden. And so the same kind of mechanism the actual angels can do. So one of the things I often recommend to people who are really trying to really forge the good and do a lot of good in the culture and that type of thing is ask either Our Lady to, send her angels down, but ask your guardian angel or the angels to keep you hidden from the wrong kinds of people. And it has a phenomenally good effect and it'll keep. So what'll happen is and it's even a mechanism I teach. Sometimes I'll teach people who run major corporations, and they'll complain to me like, we just keep getting the wrong kinds of people in, they keep coming in and they cause all this damage. I said, well, ask the angels to keep your corporation hidden from them, but at the same time, ask them to keep it known to the people that need to know, so they can actually affect other people to where they don't, decide, I'm going to go work for Sean, and then they come in and cause you all this damage. You can actually keep those kinds of people away, or the types of people that, could cause you harm or whatever the case is. Just ask Our Lady to keep me hidden from them. I do it in relationship to certain people, and just to keep me hidden so that I don't have this. And Our Lady's been very good to that, but the angels are the ones that kind of execute that process.
Do we have any idea of what their realm looks like? I mean, they seem, the majority, almost all the time invisible to us.
Yeah.
So do we have any idea of what their realm, what their perspective of this realm looks like? And how do they transfer realms? Are they in another dimension that coincides with this dimension? I mean, if you're driving down the road and your car goes off and an invisible thing throws your car back on the road. I mean,
right.
are they
well, a
transferring from one dimension to the other in a split second? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. They're not in another dimension because a dimension is a physical thing, and they're not physical. They don't have bodies. They can actually move physical things just with their minds. So it's a form of telekinesis type of thing, but they can have it. And so, in fact, there's a lot of theological speculation by certain theologians throughout history that originally Adam and Eve had the power of telekinesis, and then God restricted it to our bodies. Because when we make a choice, I can make a choice to think about something different, and that means that I'm using my will, which is an immaterial thing, to move my body, right? So we do have some ability to do that, and they also think that that the saints have that capacity as well to do that, God permitting. Okay, so all that being said, but basically what it means is that because they don't have any bodies, but in their minds, they see all the stuff that's actually going on. Now, their experience of seeing, for us, physical things have a much stronger impression on us because that's the way God just kind of designed us. Whereas with the angels, when they think of a concept, it's far more intense of an experience than we get even of a physical thing. And so they see those things with great clarity, and then their wills, they can actually move. Then if they want to affect us in some way and God permits it, just by their wills, they can actually move it. It's like a form of telekinesis, but they can just move it, God permitting, so they can apply their will to actually move those particular things.
Can they see our demons?
Yes, they see everything that is going on in the spiritual world.
Can the demons see them?
Yes, they can.
did they communicate?
Not usually, although once in a while they will, and it's usually a one-way form of communication, where the angels are telling the demons, knock it off, or you can't do this, you can't do that. Because even if the other angels, the lower angels know there's no point in trying to communicate with them because they're not going to listen because they're following the will of God. The only time that seems to be different is in cases that protract of possession. There's 6 stages of liberation. In the stage 6 is actual liberation. Stage 5 is called the ascendancy phase, and there's a part of that phase. It's in 4 parts, and there's a part of that phase called the saints phase. And basically, there's the saints phase, so that sometimes the saints will actually show up. I don't see them, but the person who's possessed sees the saints, etc. But then there's another part called the bargaining phase. And basically that's just before the saints phase. And the bargaining phase is the demons know they're losing. They've lost. And so from time to time, the person who's possessed will actually see the interchange. And so it's very similar to the kind of like the interchange that Pope Leo saw of Satan approaching God and asking him, give me 100 years, right? So it's a bargaining kind of a thing. So the demon will actually approach Christ because they know he's the guy that's got all the power. He said it, all power on heaven and earth is given to me. So they know he's the guy. They can't do anything without asking him. So that they'll actually go to him and ask, give me this power, give me this permission to do X, Y, and Z. And he most always says no, but the person who's possessed will see that interchange. So that's about the only time that I've recognized that they'll communicate with, either the saints or Christ or whatever the case is. That's when that communication goes that direction. But otherwise, it's just a one-way communication.
Okay. I've never really realized the power of prayer until the last couple of weeks when I did another episode on this, but we've been talking about it all week, my last psychedelic experience, and I said some of your deliverance prayers and had intuitive experiences of demons leaving my body.
Right.
And some of the things we experienced yesterday here were extremely profound.
I've actually had that experience even in session where mentally I just said to God the Father, punish this demon in a way that you've never punished someone before, and he just, boom, it's just this immediate. So you know that he's sitting there listening, but what you ask for is what you're going to get, and the principle is that prayer begets what it signifies. That's part of the spiritual mechanics. That means in the spiritual warfare, what you ask for is what you're going to get. So if you ask your guardian angel, hey, if you, communicate with him and say, hey, look, I need you to protect me, protect my children, that's what he's going to do. The main thing that people have to do, though, is they have to understand how evil works. And when they see the evil in their life, they have to go and ask Christ for the specific things. So, for example, if you have a child who's like, oh, I think I'm gay, or I think I'm this, you have to start asking Christ, give him the grace to see that that's not what the situation is, or give him the grace to, not want to be transgender or whatever the case, but also Christ block any demons that could be causing those kinds of thoughts in this kid's mind. If they start asking for the very specific things, that's when they're going to see the most effect, because what you ask for is what you're going to get.
So do we talk to our angels, or do we communicate? Do we talk to them, or
yeah,
do
you can
we
talk
pray
to them because they can hear. They can when they see it in their mind when we're talking verbally, but they can also, if we direct our thoughts to them, they can hear our thoughts. But with God, the way it kind of works is that, yeah, he'll listen to us. So the direct stuff does work, and so I'm not telling people they shouldn't do that. But on the other hand, he set up certain saints and even our angels, he sent them up so that he wants them us to go to them because then they can go to him and ask him, and because he likes them more, he's more likely to give it. And that's how basic intercession works. By the way, a lot of Protestants will say, well, the saints can't pray for us, and that's such a... We believe, even the Protestants believe in intercessory prayer. It's just who can do it is the question, because they pray for other people too. So they're interceding for other people. And so the question is can the saints do it? Well, there's nothing in scriptures that says that they can't.
Let's talk a little bit more about the spiritual battle.
Mm-hmm.
Is the battle happening right now between angels and demons, or is this something that's coming?
So they don't fight each other direct. Well, they do kind of fight each other directly, but it's so then after their fall, there was a short kind of period of time in which they were still in the presence of each other. At a certain point, Saint Michael, who's the guardian angel of the elect, that's his assigned task. He's the guardian angel of the elect. God gave him the power and told him separate them and so that they can't be engaging in this battle with each other anymore. And so we know about that separation because it's right in Scripture, where the Lazarus, the guy that's damned says, hey, can you send Lazarus down to tell my brothers, or and he says, well, first of all, we can't cross the abyss. Right, there's this separation, and the only time it's ever allowed to cross that is God has to allow it. Okay, so we know that that's actually happened. So there's this actual abyss. That means that in the spiritual warfare, the angels and the saints aren't necessarily battling each other, and the reason being is because there's this thing called prelation. Prelation is the ability of one thing who's higher, a prelate, is able to command a lower one to do something. All of the angels in heaven and all the saints in heaven have prelation in relationship to the demons. So all they have to do is command them, leave, and boom, it has an immediate effect. So they don't sit there and battle back and forth. It has this immediate effect. That means that the battle now is primarily in us, in this world, in our minds, primarily in our bodies, that's where the primary field of the battle is that's actually occurring, the primary theater, as they would say. And so basically what it is that then that means that there's two components to the spiritual warfare. One, we have to get our guardian angels and the saints and God and more involved in our lives so that they drive them out. So there's that. But then also we can combat them to leave as well. And so we can actually command the demons, because Christ gave us the example, Satan, get behind me, right? So we can tell the demons, get away from me. And because we have rights over our body, they have to respect the natural law in relationship to us. And so if we're persistent, they'll leave.
Do angels kill? I read somewhere that a single angel killed 180,000 in one day.
Yes, in the sense of there has been some history that my understanding is that's the part of the mechanism in the Old Testament. They can, but they only do it when God tells them to do it. And it's the same kind of a thing in which you saw in the Old Testament God telling the Jews in the Old Testament, hey, you got to wipe out this whole group of people. And the reason being is because even the children, and to us that's just pretty jarring, but the part of the reason for that is because you have to wipe out the adults because they're doing the evil and they're going to cause evil and you're going to get sucked into the evil. The problem is that the demons that are afflicting the parents are also start affecting the kids that get attached to the kids. And so even if you let the kids leave, you're going to have a problem with it later. And so that's why it was done in the Old Testament. And I'm not suggesting that we do that as a form of warfare today. It's a different kind of a dynamic, but that's actually why. So in the past, the angels could kill entire segments of population, God permitting.
You brought up Michael several times. What about Gabriel?
A lot of the angels have a primary assigned task for which they were given, and then they have a secondary task that's usually connected to that. And so the other thing that Gabriel actually can do too is to encourage us and to get us to be more devoted to Christ.
What about Raphael?
So in the Old Testament, of course, he's the one that heals. So you can invoke him for like people who like might have cancer or whatever the case is, ask for him to actually heal you.
Are there any other significant?
Well, one other thing in relationship to Raphael, so also Raphael sequestered, he's one of the nemeses of Asmodeus, who's the demon of homosexuality in men. He's also a demon of impurity. But in the Old Testament, he sequesters him in the deserts. And so you can ask Saint Raphael if you're dealing with that particular demon, but you can ask Saint Raphael to be the one to help you in that regard. There's different levels in heaven.
What are the levels?
The levels are actually based upon primarily the sanctifying grace that's in your soul. St. Paul refers to, in his letters, he refers to the fact that sanctifying grace is basically God indwelling in us, in our souls. It's a qualitative change. So how much we have him indwelling in us determines where we're at in heaven. Now, some of that is broken down into the 9 choirs of angels, so we're kind of in that. But there's also like different parts of heaven, so that they call them parts. But it basically just means that there's certain people that will enjoy certain things more than others based upon the kinds of virtues that they achieved in this life or the good actions that they did in this life. They'll just find certain things more enjoyable in heaven. All of us will have the beatific vision, that is to see God face to face. And basically what that is, when you actually look at how the saints talk about the structure of this beatific vision, St. Paul talks about, I will see him face to face, and I will know myself as I am known. So you actually see God inside God's mind. You actually see him. And so the way that works is, in order for that to happen, there can't be any medium between us and him. And so what he does is, he infuses in our minds this, for us, because we can't see him right now, even though he's here. So what God does is he infuses us another, what they call the light of glory. He infuses in us, he strengthens our mind so that all of a sudden everything can just peel back and we're able to see spiritual realities in what they actually are. And then, but that lumen gloria basically means that he infuses that in our mind, and at the same time, he presses his very nature on our minds. So we see him literally face to face, we see him. That means that once you see him, you can see everything he causes, everything that he's done, all the glory in in the created order, all that, you're able to see it. We can't comprehend it all at once, but we can kind of look at it from different features. And so that's what heaven is like. It's like spending all our time looking at this from a variety of different points of view. The holier you are, the more lumen gloria you get, and that means the more you understand God and the better you see his glory and his goodness, and as a result of that, the happier you actually are. So how happy you are is how holy you are and how good of a life that you led in this life.
So if we both die today and go to heaven and we're at different levels, will we be able to interact?
Yeah, we'll have, all those people in heaven have perfectly interaction. And so let's just say you get a higher place in heaven.
So it's a state of mind. A level of heaven is a state of mind. Kind of. Yeah, it's a state in the sense
of
a different location.
Exactly. So it just means that, like say you're higher in heaven, it just means you understand more and you have a higher degree of happiness than I have. I'm still perfectly happy, but there can be degrees of perfection. And so the people in heaven have different, and there's no envy. When I see you enjoying the beatific vision, let's just say for the sake of argument that you have a higher, I'll actually see how good that is and how God, and I'll take delight in seeing the fact that you have a higher place than I do. So there's no envy, there's no nothing.
Do you think we will interact with relatives here on Earth after we pass?
Yes, we actually do. I mean, it depends. Like, so if our relatives actually make it to heaven, then there is some interaction. I'll give you a couple of examples that I've had just recently. My father died about 3 years ago. In fact, next week, it'll be 3 years next week. And I had a very strong or good relationship with my father. And in fact, he's the guy that just taught me, hey, look, real men don't do this or that, type of thing. But anyway, so when he passed, because I worked as a mechanic with him, twice I've come across a mechanical thing that I couldn't solve. So I literally just said, hey, Dan, how do I solve this problem? instantaneously. All of a sudden, boom, I get this clarity and see, all you have to do is put the wrench on this direction. Literally, like, even though I had been working trying to sort this thing out for 45 minutes, boom, the thing came right off. I've had 2 experiences of that with my father. So I think there is an actual interaction. There's also numerous people who talk about, like I know one exorcist whose mother was a very holy woman. And during his sessions, he'll actually call his mother down and say, hey, come down and be present to this. And the person who's possessed can see the mother. So we do have interaction with them. It's just, it's a one-way kind of a communication. We can communicate with them. They can do certain things with us. There are very, very rare circumstances where they appear to people, but I've never seen an authentic case in my life. I've just read about them.
Do we see our direct lineage when we die?
Yeah.
Isn't everybody our lineage, though, if we all came from Adam and Eve?
That's right. We'll know it all. We'll see it.
We'll see what?
We'll actually see the entire lineage of who both up and down the actual line.
Did Christ have a guardian angel?
So that is a question which St. Thomas Aquinas asks, and then after him, it was pretty much the general belief of the theologians and saints throughout after that. And basically, we have a guardian angel because we're in the process of trying to save our souls and get to heaven, right? And so they guard us so that we can actually get there. So that state and of us, the process of getting there, historically the saints from the patristics on called that the wayfarer state. We're wayfarers. We're on the process of, we're on the way to getting there. So the difference though is that Christ, even though he was alive in this life, he had the beatific vision from the time of his conception, according to the entire tradition of the church. And that's one of the reasons why we know that he had this, because of the fact that he would actually talk about I and the Father are one, so you could actually see it. But he would also say things like, or you would see in Scripture, Christ knew their thoughts because he could see it. His human mind could see it in his divine nature. He could see because God was causing them. So he could actually see those things. So that's one of the, so we know that he had the actual beatific vision. That means that he's not a wayfarer. He's already, his human nature was already in union with God, which is the final goal. And so he wasn't on the way, he was already at the end. And so St. Thomas says he didn't actually have a guardian angel. It didn't mean that there weren't guardian angels who assisted him at times. It didn't also mean that he wouldn't necessarily, in his divine nature, command certain angels to kind of keep certain things at bay so that he could do certain things. So, for example, you would read in the scriptures how the Jews would try and lay hold of him, and he would just walk right through them, right? And so the angels can kind of block them from being able to do that. So the Jews from seizing him. So there was, he actually mentions this to Nicodemus. He says, you're going to see the angels ascending and descending upon the Son of Man, because all of the angels in heaven knew who Christ was, and they knew that he, also being God, was to whom they must serve. And that's also when he said, all power in heaven and earth will be given to me. So even the angels in heaven obey him and submit to him. So they serve him. And so we know that so he didn't have a guardian angel, but they all served him.
Beautiful. Well, Father, I feel really good about this interview.
Good.
Would you like to end it in a prayer?
Sure. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Jesus, we give you thanks for everything that you have given us during this, and for all of the knowledge that you have communicated through divine revelation, which has come down through us through the tradition of the Catholic Church, and that we have actually been able to make use of. We also thank you for all of the graces that you have given to all of us, and we ask you to continue to give us the grace so that we may be faithful to your call to become holier, but also that we may be willing to follow the truth regardless of the personal cost. And in that, then, God, we will finally arrive at you, who is truth itself. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
All right.